episode of Let's Get It Right with me, your host, Vernon Wright. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Right Leader. Hashtag That's Impact the Right Way as well. Be sure to go ahead and follow, as you see on the screen, the two hashtags, the Spirit of Grit and the Many Voices of Grit. So I want to go ahead and let you know that the guest that I have on the show today is yet another treat that we're fortunate, honored, and privileged, very humbled and grateful to bring to you. And that guest, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about who that guest is here in just a second. But before I do that, as you notice and as you see on the screen, the title of this episode is Find Your Grit Inside. Let me say that one again. Find Your Grit Inside. And that's what this episode is going to be about. So the person who's going to help us talk through that and find the grit that we already have inside is none other than Greg Moffitt, someone that many of you know. If you're active on our Twitter PLN, you've seen him. He is active there and contributes a lot of things daily. So he is someone that I personally consider it a privilege to know and to have as part of my PLN. If you would, Greg, for those that may not know you and for those that know you as well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Vernon, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. The honor and privilege is really all mine. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and to be here today. I am an elementary school principal and in a tiny town in Northern California. And I've been a teacher for a while before that. And I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a doctoral student, an education geek. I'm a person that just loves to learn and to think about things. And so I am excited to be here today talking with you.
Very honored and very privileged and grateful to have you on the show today. So that being said, are we ready to go into the first question, Greg?
Absolutely. I am absolutely ready. And once again, thanks for letting me be here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's go into question number one. So very simply, question number one is this, Greg. For those that are watching and viewing this episode, what are some examples of grit that you've gone through in your life? And for that matter, what are some instances where you were going through them, some challenging times, and you didn't even know that it was grit in real time, but realized later on in your moments of reflection that it really was grit?
Vernon, I love this question because I think it implies that all of us have grit. All of us have faced moments or experienced challenges or things in our lives that have made us who we are, made us who we are today. And so I love the question for that reason, that it makes all of us think and reflect and think about moments that have shaped us and challenged us and hopefully taught us something. So I appreciate the gritty question. If I had to pick a moment, I think back to the birth of my daughter. It was a very long sort of labor, 72 hours, and a lot longer for my wife than it was for me. But I really remember that moment. After the delivery, a few more days in the hospital, we go home, and it's great being home. We're enjoying it. Things are going really well, and we are all exhausted. And so the baby goes to sleep, and we're like, oh, we're gonna take a nap too. And my wife couldn't sleep. She just started coughing, and coughing some more, and she could not fall asleep. So we sort of think about, what should we do? Maybe she caught something in the hospital, maybe something's going on. So she goes to the urgent care clinic, and I'm home, with our baby. She's 5 days old at the time. And I get a call from her that says she needs to go to the emergency room right away. And she's going, and we're not allowed to go. The doctors don't want me or, our 5-year-old daughter to go with her. She gets admitted later that night with some pretty serious heart conditions, and we couldn't be there for her. She's in the ICU, and they didn't want a 5-day-old daughter there, and they wouldn't readmit her to the maternity ward, and so it is me with this child, and I am completely clueless. I have absolutely no idea what I am going to do or how to figure this out. And she's hungry. And this was not part of the birthing plan. This was not how we were going to be spending our first day home from the hospital. We didn't have bottles. We didn't have formula. We had nothing. And so it's 11 o'clock at night, and my wife is, in the hospital, and I have our daughter, and I head to Target because she's hungry, and I need bottles, and I need formula, and I need nipples, and I don't know what I am doing. So I vividly remember this. I don't think I will ever forget this. I am standing in an aisle in Target, and I am looking at this wall of bottles and formula, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm holding this 5-year-old, little creature in front of me, and I'm rocking back and forth, and I think, singing and maybe sobbing. And these two women come over to me, and they just say, "It's going to be okay." I don't know who they are. I don't know their names. I probably couldn't even point them out today if I saw them. But they just came over and they helped. They said, "You got this. You can do this. Let me help you." And they said, "Your dad figured it out for you. You will figure it out for your daughter." And I had to, right? I had to be there for, my daughter. I had to be there for my wife, who said, "Don't mess this up. You are responsible. You will figure this out." And so that moment for me was me realizing that everything I had experienced, everything I had lived through, had gotten me ready to that point. And so maybe that's grit, right? Maybe that strength, that determination to keep going forward is what grit is. But maybe it's also relying on others, and being thankful for, those two women that just helped me out. That didn't have to come over and help me get the bottle and the right size nipple and the right formula, who didn't have to tell me to look inside, to figure it out, to realize that I could do it. But that for me is the moment where I started thinking about, we all have these lived experiences. We all have challenges. We all have moments in our lives when we've had to overcome something. And it's about remembering those moments, and in those moments, realizing the strength that we have inside.
And I think that's really impactful, and that's really important for several reasons, right, Greg? One of the things I will say is that I empathize with you. I remember many moons ago, right, being a brand new father and standing there and looking at what was literally, as you just described it, a wall of formula. And not knowing the different types and what to get. And so I empathize with you. And just as those ladies told you about, that you would find it and you would get through it, I walked through that with you as well. So I wanted to go ahead and affirm you in sharing that story. One of the things that I also want to talk about and touch on that you shared with us really leads us into question number 2. But also too, it speaks to the episode in general, and that is finding your grit inside. Finding your grit inside. And as some of you may see, that is the title of this episode, is Finding Your Grit Inside. So you're standing there, you see that, and they helped you to look inside. Is that right? To really to try to go ahead and get a way or a means of gathering yourself back together. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah. They just stood next to me. They put their hand on my shoulder, and they just said that I could do it, that they had my back, that they were there for me. And that was what I needed, right? I just needed someone to say, look inside. You will figure it out. And I think so often we tell kids especially, but others, go get some grit, just go get it. Let me teach it to you. Let me show you how. But really, I think it's about looking inside and reminding kids they have it. They've been through experiences. I think about the students in my school. I think about the students that I've taught when I was a classroom teacher. And for some of them, the things that they have overcome just to get to school that day, just to show up, is grit, is strength, is this determination that I think we sometimes forget. And I think about their families. I think about some of the struggles that the families of our students experience. They have overcome, they have gotten their child to school. That should be celebrated. That should be honored. That should be valued. That is a lived experience that we need to honor. And so I think instead of trying to go out and buy some curriculum or pull something off the shelf or make something up, it's sometimes just about helping our kids name the moments in their lives when they've been gritty, identify the strengths and the talents that they have already, and bring in other folks from the community, from our schools, from their lives that have overcome almost unthinkable things, right? And who are surviving and thriving because of it. And that by naming it, by recognizing it, by celebrating it, we are going to recognize the grit in all of us. Because when folks have overcome something, they have grit, and they have this strength that can be sustained over time. And I think we just need to honor that and recognize it and value it.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to say, and really what has been so phenomenal about what you've shared is it really answers our first two questions. One is about sharing experiences from your own life where you went through them and they were grit, but maybe you didn't necessarily see that they were grit in real time, but you realized later on that they were. And then secondly is the part about as a leader, because obviously you are a campus leader, those that would come to you and would ask you, Mr. Moffitt, Greg, can you help me to find this thing called grit, right? In my own life. And you've really spoken to that already, which is fabulous. And it's really this as a moment, taking a moment to find and to go through that process of introspection, of saying, you know what, rather than me look to, as you said, a curriculum over here or some other structure or program over here, let me first look inside, right? And I think not only is it valuable for us to ask students to look inside and to realize the things that they've gone through, especially in some cases, they've had, as you have said, what we would call ACEs in the business, adverse childhood experiences, but also doing that as a part of social emotional learning, but also asking the teachers, our adults, our staff members that are in our schools and in our districts to say, hey, let's have some moments of introspection from the adult level as well, so we can kind of understand that this conversation really progresses when we've all had moments of introspection collectively. So I want to go ahead and say this with approximately about 4 minutes left on the clock. What would you say if you had the opportunity, and I call this Letters from the Future, which is one of my favorite parts of each of these episodes, what would you say to yourself if you had the opportunity to write a letter and give yourself guidance, wisdom, and advice, and go back in time in a time machine and deliver that letter to your younger self? What would you put in that letter?
Wow, Vernon, I love this question too, because I really do think when you take a moment to reflect and think back, that's where the learning happens. That's when you grow the most. I think I would tell myself way back when I first started doing this school thing, this education thing, to get over myself. And I'll be that blunt about it, right? To get over myself. That if you are a teacher, if you are a classroom leader, if you are one of the school leaders, if you are one of the district leaders, that it is not about you. It is about being in service to others, and it is about helping others and listening to them. just a few days ago, I had one of those days, right? One of those terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days where you're like Alexander and you want to move to Australia. And I got interrupted all day long, right? Someone came in with this crisis and that crisis, and all were really important. And I came home and I'm venting to my wife and I am telling her, you know, I got no work done. I couldn't get it done. I got interrupted all day and I couldn't do my job. And she looks at me and she goes, what do you think your job is? Like, your job is to help people. Your job is to listen to people. Your job is to be there. So be quiet and do your job. Stop complaining about it. And so I think that is what I wished I had learned way sooner than I have now, to do my job, which is to be in service of others and to be there for others and to listen to them and help them. And sometimes point out to them that they can overcome, that they are strong, that they have talents, and that they can do this. So that's the letter that I wish I had gotten when I started teaching, when I started being a school administrator. You know, my wife had some good advice to do my job, to be there for others.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that is powerful. The whole interview has been powerful and has really spoken to what we value a lot here on this show, which is a great deal of authenticity, and each of our guests in their own unique way speaking to exactly where you are in your career and meeting you where you are with really pertinent information, and not just theory and ideas, ladies and gentlemen, but these are their experiences. These are the things that they have lived through. That's what makes each of these episodes so special. And this one continues with that same exact tradition. And so I want to personally thank Greg for being here on the show today. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. As you see on the title for this show, Find Your Grit Inside. Let me say that one again. Find your grit inside. This has been a phenomenal episode. As I always say, do your part, share the episode, and pay it forward. So with that being said, remember, until next time, feed your brain, feed your soul, and absolutely grow your role. That's impact the right way. See you next time.